All right, and welcome back. It is July the 23rd, and I'm Jennifer Britton. I'm so pleased to be here with my co-host, Michelle Mullins. Together, we are the Remote Pathways podcast. So how you doing, Michelle?
Oh, I'm doing great, Jen. Just came back from just a time of deep diving and deep thinking and back at my virtual table with you today. How about you?
Love it. Well, I'm continuing to work as I'm terming remote. And again, I think many of us are seeing in the remote space, there's just a spectrum of this work. I hope you're appreciating whatever you're doing. I've been enjoying the disconnection. My cell phone doesn't work well where I am. In fact, it really doesn't work. I can hear it ring, but I can't get a cell phone out. So that adds some interesting complexity. And I think that it also speaks to today's topic, which is every remote professional is a leader. I'd like everyone today to think about how their world of work has changed, whether they're a formal leader or whether they're a team member. These are actually skills. Leadership skills are skills for everyone in the remote space. So I know we recorded this several months ago, and you've been really excited about this episode to be released. What do you want to say as we get started with our call today on every remote professional as a leader, Michelle?
I think it's my favorite because it goes back to just that question that you kicked us off with on the Remote Pathways blog at the beginning of the year. What's possible? When you give that, bring that awareness, even if it is a little challenging to hear, right? That every remote professional is a leader. It invites the question of what's possible. So just enjoying that and sharing that episode with others and really having them take that assessment and say, where do you want to grow as a leader? What's speaking to your heart right now? And I just heard you say that thing about enjoying the disconnection. So maybe enough time has passed where people are starting to see, wait a minute, there's some good here that maybe is unexpected. So I hope people are finding that treasure. How about you? What did this stir up for you, this topic, this episode?
Well, it not just only stirred up, but I think it brought me back to many of the principles I've led by, whether it's been through my own business or through other organizations over the last 30 years. I've always been an advocate for equipping everyone on the team. Again, I think we use the term empowerment, team empowerment a lot, but I
Yes.
realized early on in my career, back in the early 1990s, that if I was going to be successful as a remote leader, I actually had to equip everyone on the team. It wasn't good enough for me to just have good communication skills. Everyone needed to have it. Influence, again, influence is a very hot topic, and that term can raise a lot of different emotions, and it can have different connotations, but we all have to learn to influence, because you may be managing up, you may be leading upwards, you may be leading across your peer group, you may be leading across a matrix as well. And so I think,
Mm-hmm.
we here at the Remote Pathways, in my writing, I really like to talk about, how this work, everything is magnified and everything is on steroids. Certainly, leadership is on steroids, the good, the bad, and the not so great. And so we do want to think about like what is needed to help our teams and our organizations thrive, because not every organization is a team of teams, right? Many organizations, we still have individual contributors, and so those individual contributors might not be seen as a leader, and these are the folks who we really need to make sure have leadership skills. So Michelle, I've I've really opened the doorway here. What do you want to add before we go into our intro question of the day?
Yeah,
Anything
I love you
else?
said question because I think, the kickoff, which you have taught me and I found so to be so true, it all comes down to the conversation. How do you get to know that leader on your team? How do you equip and empower them? You got to start with where you are.
Yes, yes.
Before you
Where
even get going where you're going, you got to know where you are. So,
So with that, let's go to our question of today, which I love. Again, Michelle does a lot of the graphics work, and I love the ones that you've chosen here. So what are the skills which make up an exceptional leader and remote professional? So I think that's such an interesting area, and maybe we'll just give people just about 20 seconds of pause, because another thing we've been talking about, and certainly this has been a big piece of my work during 2020, is just reminding people that we need a pause. We need some silence to really be thinking about things. So I want everyone just to take 20 seconds right now to reflect on an exceptional leader you've worked with, preferably in a remote space, or maybe it was a colleague that you worked with who really brought something special. I know you and Jennifer Grody call it mojo in your work. I'd call it the je ne sais quoi. Like it's just that little element of something that makes the experience a little bit different. So let's take 20 seconds right now. Everyone just reflect on an exceptional leader of what, who has made the remote work experience stand out. And with that, we'll then talk in 20 seconds. All right. That's about it, Michelle. So do you want to go first? I'd love for both of us to share our stories because I think it really probably people will hear the imprint, certainly in my world, they'll hear the imprint of this experience on this podcast even years later. So what about
Ooh,
you?
good.
Like, yeah, who do you think of as an exceptional leader in a remote space?
Yeah, I think, well, see, you, of course, I know that's going to put you on the spot, but it's true. We've been working together. This fall will be 7 years that
Wow.
we've been together, but I
Seven.
recognized it immediately. When you were presenting, you had a great sense of purpose and clarity of mission.
Mm,
And I paid attention to that, right? Because that gave such a freedom to adapt to any kind of change. But you yourself, as a leader, had that awareness. So you were able to communicate then what you were inviting other people to consider. So, yeah, not to put you on the spot, but yes, I've seen that, and your ability to dance through different teams. And again, because you had that awareness of self, um, you can dance anywhere. So, yeah.
oh,
How about you, Jen?
well, first, I want to say thank you, Michelle. I can't believe it's been 7 years since we first connected in your beautiful mountains of North Carolina. Um, but yeah, I think, to build on, actually, I was going to say one of my teams that I think helped me really develop that self awareness that you speak to, right? We can only lead to the ability in which we have had. I think exposure, right? Like life is a series of exposures. And now that I'm moving into don't like to use the term the mid part of my life. I don't think it's the mid part of my life, but it's at this stage. I can look back and think, wow, like all of those great teams that I've had the chance to work with over the years. And some of those growth edges are not easy by any means, but they really do, help us realize that how do we communicate things? How do we reposition things? Even if we lead from good intent, sometimes, especially if trust levels are low in the organizations we work with,
Yes.
our messages aren't translated or received in the way that we intend. And so, what are the skills that make up an exceptional leader? I think listening is a really, really big one, right?
Mm,
It's about listening and listening to the things that, again, might not really fit or sit well initially, but sometimes after months and even years of reflecting on feedback, like I think this also speaks to the need for feedback, we can really continue to grow because we are only as good as the people around us, truly. And if we're not equipping those that we work with, if we're not creating opportunities for development, then I think it truly is quite challenging. So thank you. Again, I think there's a self-awareness piece, and it's interesting you talk
mhm.
about self-awareness. As Michelle knows, but this past weekend was the Muskoka Novel Marathon, which is an annual event. This year it became the quarantine edition. And so for 72 hours, I joined this year 65 other writers from around the world to write a new manuscript. And what came out, and this is, you're the first to hear about it, it's actually a manuscript on remotepreneurship. So looking at entrepreneurship in not only the remote space, but also the digital space, right? We are in a digital era. And that's, I think, probably another theme that will come up. And so, what are the skills there, right? It is about the awareness. It's about the ability to lead across your team, the ability to bring people together, the ability to work across differences. And so, these are many of the skills that we want to help to foster and hone. And we need the pause, we need the feedback to really
Mhm.
help us gain that self-awareness on what works well and what doesn't as well. So
Well said, my remote friend. Well said.
well said. It may be a little long, but I'm still in that sort of mindset of writing. So, business philosophy. Let's go back to, like where we are actually on our journey, because we are now in Q3 and our last call. Let's remind listeners of our last call. 2 weeks ago, we met with our group in this room. We had a special guest. Remind us, Michelle, of who our guest was a few weeks ago to talk about motivation.
Yes, we talked to Kim Avery, and she really got us stirred up with that momentum and motivation. Kicked us off. I could hear it. I got numerous calls after that episode of things were sparked in the heart from our conversation. So I encourage you to go back and listen, even with all the technology challenges, because I looked and I was like, I was really having a technology fumble along the way. But it just reinforces the fact that it doesn't matter if there's a great conversation happening,
Yeah.
the other will work out. But yes, lots of momentum was stirred in the
Love
last.
that. And thank you again. Like, yeah, there were the tech challenges. And you know what? That's part of being in the remote space. Like, no
Yes.
need to get flapped about it. It's just like, that's okay. We'll just keep it working. Which to our, what are the skills of an exceptional leader? It's saying this isn't working. I remember you handing the reins
Right.
back to me. And that's part of what we have to do. We really have to keep shifting and pivoting as we go. So we are also now in the messy
Yes.
middle. I do want to sort of like reframe or just sort of say where we are right now. It's no surprise if it's just you and I here on the call today, because this is truly, I've seen it year after year, like end of July, typically the messy middle of the year. And messy middle being a place where, yeah, I don't know, we're here, but are we really here? Like, all this stuff has happened, and yeah, I think maybe going forward it's going to look like this, but it might actually be a bit of a place of like inertia as well. And that's where having
Oh,
others
so
around
good.
us is so critical, because while we might be in inertia, like if we are part of a team responsible for results, maybe the whole team isn't here. Maybe some people are continuing to run, and in the remote space, like I'm sure what's outside your window is different than what's outside my window right now in terms of what's happening with coronavirus, opening up,
Mhm.
lockdown, like the world is all in different spaces. So with that business philosophy, think about your motivation, because that's our big Q3. So let's discuss. Every professional is a leader. Anything else that you think is important for us to look at
Mhm.
today?
Well, I love this picture on our water cooler discussion because this lady, it's her shadow, right? It's these, and I always think of what you're leaving behind or the impact that may be invisible. It's not really present, but you're always making an impact on the people around you. Sometimes you don't see it until after looking back, but just that awareness, right? And it's like, if I know this exists, right? How can I take ownership of that? What is the impact that I'm going for? Set the intention for the impact you want to make as a leader. Um, and then check in, don't be afraid to have those conversations and say, this was my intention. Is this actually what's happening? Again, going back to that conversation, don't be afraid of the answer because it will keep you on track of where you really want to go. How about you, Jen?
Well, I'm going to actually just reinforce. You said five very powerful things in a very short span of time. So I want to draw that out. Like, first of all, the shadow, right? Like, what is the
Mhm.
shadow side? And to this, if we just even look at the shadow, like I think we present ourselves in one light, and there's always, I think, whether we call it the shadow or even the future self, I think they are actually two different parts of our personality as coaches. This is something personally I do a lot of work with as a leadership coach. I know you probably have as well, but we often ask our clients, and this could be done with a leader, it could be done with a team, to really envision aspirationally, like where do you want to go? And years ago in my work, so when I went through coaching skills training, I was asked this question. And, it was really, I wouldn't say it's a struggle, but I had to really look at like, who did I want to be 10 years later, 15 years later, which is now this moment in time. And I picked a future self. Her name is Fire, right? There's a part of me that really is about like getting to the elements of things. It's about, I really like the metaphor of fire because it can be strong and hot, but it can also be, a signaling warmth of bringing people around the campfire. To make a long story short, though, fire has a bit of a diva nature, right? And I think in my work, there's a bit of a diva that comes out sometimes. I really need that in my work with teams to help them get activated. I need that in some of the conversations with entrepreneurs around catalyzing. So, what's the shadow? You might not show up that way in every relationship, but there is usually a shadow or a future self. So thank you for reminding us of that first point. That's one. Two, you talked about impact and intentionality. So impact and intentionality were two other pieces. And I think we shared this maybe on Instagram. It certainly was a piece that I'd shared on my own personal page. But beginning of the year, I picked 9 of the icons from the guide, the Remote Pathways Guide, which is still not finished yet. But there are some icons that go with that. And I saw a photo of this yesterday in part of my office cleanup. And I was like, ooh, there were things like what's beyond the screen. There were, some intentions around looking at the landscape, looking at the horizon. So personally, I'd set some intentions at the start of the year, really not knowing January 1st what was going to come. And if we look at what's happened with remote work, like intentionality, it's been a big one, along with impact. And again, I think our voice, we can look at the statistics regularly, and it's exciting. I know for you as well as me that our voice is growing. And so we really want to invite you as well. If you enjoy the Remote Pathways podcast, please pass it on to your colleagues. Let others know about this. I had someone email me the other day saying how useful the episode we did on conflict was. And again, we had Gail Uday. I've been referring back to a lot of our earlier episodes because yes, well, quote unquote, there's a lot of remote experts out there. We've been able to call together and bring together folks who specialize in a lot of these areas, like teamwork, entrepreneurship, conflict, and coming up we've got project management in our next episode. So that's exciting. Yay. So 2 more pieces. Just want to wrap up. You had also shared in microbursts intentionality. What is it that you want to create? And then the check-in, the importance of check-in and feedback. And that's it. We know as leaders, I think personal bias, but my bias around leadership is as a leader, we need to be humble. We need to know that we are not finished growing. We need to be asking for feedback because what worked yesterday may not work today. And this is especially true in the remote space. So really be thinking about the loops that you're creating in your team for feedback, check-ins. And again, like if you don't like the word feedback, use a check-in, pulse check, like what is working and what needs a shift. It can be as simple as that. I think we operate in a very complex environment. And so for some, given the complexity outside, like maybe we just need to simplify our processes, right? And think about feedback cycles a year ago in your organization. It was like, oh, it was so complex. Well, right now, everything else is complex. Let's make feedback just really easy. And it can be ongoing. It doesn't have to be formal. It should be ongoing, especially in a remote space.
I love what you said all those years ago. The question that you asked yourself is, who do I want to be? And I think that's, we might have these project destinations, but I think that's a powerful question right now. Who do I want to be in the future, and developing that person now, right? That comes all down to character, because at the end of the day, you really don't know where you're going to land on the map. If anything, this year has shown us that, but you can be consistent in character and the person that you're going to be. So what a great destination, Jennifer.
Well,
wonderful.
And to just leverage, right? You're talking character. It makes me think of our work and having Jennifer Grody here on strengths. Like a lot of the coaches that have joined us and a lot of the leaders, are working around strengths-based work. And while it doesn't shift dramatically, unless we make big changes, right? I saw that in my work. Like our core is our core, right? Our core is our core. So how do we go back to that? How do we keep it simple? As we
Yes, please.
All right. Well, there we go. We've managed to talk quite a bit on this virtual water cooler today. So let's go to our questions. What are our questions to maybe leave people with to reflect on this week?
Yes, I think going back to that same episode, if you haven't listened to it yet, go back and listen, and then look at the download, because it has that assessment that you put together, Jen. That's so good about what skills do you want to develop. Just lean in there, get quiet. That pause that Jennifer was talking about. Listen to your heart. What is really a good investment right now? Considering everything. And then vision casting. What might that look like? Once you zoom in on that skill that you want to develop, what will that skill bring you? How will it change what's happening in your world right now? So, how about you? What would you like to leave everyone with?
I think building on to that, regardless of what skill it is, just remember that here in the remote space, there are so many ways we can be developing skills, right? Like
Yes.
a lot of, for years, we've always been thinking of, oh, I have to go to a training. Well, today training can look like so many different things. It could be a webinar series. It could be going to YouTube and, developing your own playlist around a certain topic. It could be taking a video-based course. It could be jumping into a professional association meeting.
Mhm.
I'm really cognizant of this because a few days ago I was speaking with a group of certified learning professionals, and we did get into the landscape of what I like to share in effective virtual conversations of like the ecosystem of virtual learning. And I think we often forget that, learning is multifaceted. I haven't even mentioned coaching, although that's been in the backstory of today, and also mentoring. Like, I think this is the time to find a great mentor to work with, to build in conversations on a regular basis to talk about, can you share a little bit more about how you've done this or resources you'd recommend? Because the crowdsourcing nature of the virtual space is so critical. And I think we
Mhm.
want to leverage that, whether it's through one mentor or through literally crowdsourcing. And that can look like a lot of different things. So there may be some listeners who are like piqued by that, really be thinking about how do you leverage your communities, which a team is just another embodiment of community. We are really in an era, and I think speaks to the digital era. We're really in an era of community at all levels and collaboration. So that's what
Yes.
I'm thinking of.
Oh, so good. I'm glad to be landing in the space with you, Jen.
Well, I am too. And together we hope that you're enjoying all of our things. Just as Michelle said, be sure to head on over to remotepathways.com, find the blog page. So this is where you're going to find the download. And I would encourage you, do it now rather than later, because we've been very generous in leaving all of this material content out for you, and we'll be culling that into different ways. But right now you can access all 17 weeks. So episode 17 is our download. You can see a screenshot here. Every remote professional leads leadership skills. And you know what? I probably realize there's two things that I'm talking about in one breath. So you will find this download over at the podcast page under episode 17, but then you will find at the blog the weekly blog listing. And I think we're probably around week 28, 29 of the year. So there's a lot that you can benefit from at this moment in time. Be sure to head on over and spend a little bit of time over at the Remote Pathways site. If you have feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. What else would you like to see?
Yes.
What would you like to have made more visible as well? So with that, anything you want to mention about the blog or the downloads?
Yeah, do them. They're great. Even if you're an individual, I do them to get, individually and then collectively with the people that I work with. Those weekly downloads are great Monday morning kickoffs. So
Yeah, and
do
again, they
them.
were developed for you to really use. As long as you keep the copyright and attribution, we'd
Mhm.
be happy to have you print them as is, share them as is with attribution. So please do enjoy the
Yes.
content. And It's interesting. Every week, every time we do one of our conversation sparkers. So this week's question is, what type of learning do you want to undertake? I actually forgot about this, but obviously it was imprinted enough. So are you thinking about working with a mentor? Are you wanting to take a new on-demand course? Are you wanting to sign up for a conference? And there's some amazing conferences happening online this summer. So Michelle, I want to ask you, like, what type of learning do you want to undertake in the next month?
Yeah, I'm taking a deeper dive into strengths. I've been working with Jennifer Grody, and the assessment, they've gone deeper into the 5. They've expanded to the 34, taking a deeper dive. And so I recently got my results, and I'm so curious. I can't wait to see how it fleshes out, that new information. So, yeah.
New information, and strengths is such a fantastic doorway. So I think that was episode 10. If you're interested in
Yes.
learning more about strengths, definitely check out episode 10 of the podcast. We also did a related community call on strengths, having Jennifer Grody here. And I think it's such an important doorway. So that's Michelle's learning. I feel like I've been learning the last
How
couple of
about you?
weeks. I did something recently on developing yet another speaking topic. So that's been really fun. And again, I speak a lot on, working in a remote space, learning in a remote space. But I think my learning has also been, just in the the art of balance, right? I'm sort of in a season, metaphorically and other, of just, having a lot of different things on the go, and just looking from a learning landscape of like balance across difference, whether it's different hats that I'm wearing, different projects that I'm working on, even different bodies of my work, whether I move in one breath from speaking about group and team coaching, then into remote work. It's just all about balance, and finding my sort of my weighting of just how they play out differently every day. So that's it.
Beautiful.
All right.
Rhythm.
A rhythm, but here it is. So the quote of the week, John Maxwell: leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others. So how are you enrolling other? How are you also being just exceptional in bringing people together to see what you can create together?
Yes. Love
Now,
it.
I see you've put a little other addition here. Clear is kind, from Jennifer Grody, and I love hearing that. So say a little to that quote.
Yeah, what's funny is that is in there from a previous one, and I didn't even know, but yes, that's what I'm learning. It's one of the challenges I have in life. I used to say that held me back, but I've discovered it's part of my unique awesomeness is dyslexia. And so it is incredibly challenging for me sometimes to take what is in here and making it clear. So she brought this to the surface. I can't remember where she drew it from, but she said, clear is kind. And I just kind of let that run in the background of my heart when I'm communicating with others. So,
Oh, I love it, and Jennifer Grody, when I saw that, I hadn't seen that in one of our earlier episodes, because we're usually rushing to get to this point. But, it reminds me of a couple of other things. And to our feedback conversation today, a great book around feedback is, of course, Radical Candor by Kim Scott.
mm,
Um, Kim Scott, in her writing, talks, I don't think she says it as clear as kind, but really part of the premise of Radical Candor is to be clear with your feedback, and that
mm.
ultimately it is in kindness that we are giving feedback. So if you haven't read Radical Candor, definitely check that out. I got the privilege of working with one of my clients around that book a couple of years ago, and it really transformed the way their organization was providing feedback in person and also virtually as well. So with that, our next episode, we're excited to bring
Yay!
Cindy Hooker, who is also a PlanDoTrack facilitator, and she's going to come and speak with us about project management, working remote, and my 2019 body of work, PlanDoTrack, which you've heard a little bit more about, but you'll definitely hear a lot more in that. And this episode is dropping early August, right, Michelle? It's coming out early August.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, first week in August, first Wednesday in August, and it's so much fun because Yes, it has a professional in there, but you'll also hear the three of us. We are virtual friends spread across, the world. But it's like we've known each other for years. So we hope that you enjoy that connection as well.
Now, sadly, we won't have Cindy with us live on our next community call because it will be very, very, very early in the morning for where she resides. But we will have our next community call on August the 6th. And we will talk, I think we'll probably talk maybe some of those themes, project management, productivity in the remote space. That's an area we haven't done a lot around in this podcast. But of course, I have my PlanDoTrack calls as well, and happy to bring more in that. So, anything else you want to say on our next episode or the current one?
Yeah,
Because,
just
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, this no, I'm really looking forward to that because PlanDoTrack, like I have it. I like keep it. It is my lifeline, especially for planning, and then I love, so I can't wait till we explore and expand on this for all of our listeners and they know the incredible value that it can bring. So just looking forward to it.
I am too. So I hope that you'll join us. Our call in a couple of weeks will be at 7 a.m. on August the 6th. Bring your favorite bevy. Now, Michelle and I also have different creative projects on the go that we'd love to have you join us for. So, Michelle, talk a little bit about your current focus for this moment in time.
Yes. So I encourage you, if you are, your heart is stirring about like, what does remote working success look like for me? Right? Define taking the time, the power of the pause to explore that and get really clear on that. I do extract some of the success principles that are shared in PlanDoTrack. So it's a great opportunity to just do that investigation, and oftentimes it's just one person that's in there with the webinar, one, maybe two people, and I keep it that way for a reason. It's very highly personalized. So you can go on over to Remote Pathways and find the link to that page and go ahead and register. These will kick off in August. So go ahead and
Great.
put your name on the list if you're interested.
And I would highly recommend, again, speaking to the theme today of the importance of having a vision of where you want to go. That's something that you will get with Michelle over the course of that 90 minutes. So, Michelle, when I go to remotepathways.com, is it over on the resources page? Do you know offhand which page they'll
I
find it?
actually, yeah. I mean, I need to pop it over there. I know with confidence that it's under the services tab where we share our services. So the opportunity is there.
All right, so definitely do check that out. And maybe as part of the show notes for today's episode, I'll make sure we get a direct link into that because I think
Oh,
August is an opportune time to really be pausing. And if you listen to this after August, any time is good to create a vision.
yes.
But certainly, I think mid-year, end of year, these are the times where we really want to think about what is it that you're creating intentionally or otherwise. So check that one out. All right, and I've got not only the remote team success days, but something that's been super popular. I thought it would be, but I had no idea how much it would be. My latest on-demand video-based course is called Remote Team Builders. So this is part one. It's about an hour, hour and a half course with 9 different modules looking at different types of team building activities that you can do with your team. So we go through openers, we go through closers, we talk a little bit about decision making and other relevant topics, including styles. So it is not a replacement for a deeper dive, but I think given that a lot right now are struggling with what is important about remote team development, this is a great starting point. So also we will include a link to that. It's called Remote Team Builders. You'll find that over on my teams365.teachable.com website. And I've been amazed at how popular this is becoming. This, of course, is it's really geared for whether you're a leader, a team member, or a coach or facilitator. So check it out. Check out the worksheets that are associated with it, because again, I think that's what people are really excited about is like, ooh, I have something that I can really help me think through what can our remote team development look like. And as I've been sharing a lot in recent weeks, the 2016 survey, and I had this in an EDC a few years ago, back in 2016, only 22% of remote teams were having any form of team development. Wow. Yeah, that's a big wow. That was a 2016 survey done by Culture Wizard. Now, the good news is, one, I think we're going to have more up-to-date research on what that number is this year. But as we get into the fall, as we get into back to work, what are you scheduling? What are the elements you want? And if you need someone, that's where Michelle and I both could come in remotely, of course, or in certain locations, there might be an opportunity for us to do some face-to-face, depending on where you are. And with that, do check it out, Remote Pathways and Services page, or over at teams365.teachable.com.
And
All
can I just
righty.
put in here too, grab a friend. Like if you work alone, grab a friend and sign up for this on-demand program and go through it together. A colleague or just somebody that's in the space with you, sign up for this course. It's a great little remote adventure that you can take together. So,
Thank you, Michelle. And to our
mhm.
spirit of collaboration, right? We learn better in partnership. We learn better when we get to talk about concepts together. And so, in fact, with that remote team builders course, I did a call a few weeks ago, more of a Q&A, but I will probably every month or two be holding just like a, oh, hey, popping in to do something more. All
Oh,
right,
fun.
well, that is it. So our next call, we've gone a little long today, Thursday, August 6th. We hope that you'll be back and join us, 7 a.m. And that is it. Michelle, you always get last words. What would you like to say as we go to wrap up?
Yes, just thank you for everyone, the investment that you're making in yourselves as a leader and all the leaders around you. That impact and that influence and all these things will come to the surface. So you are making a wise investment right now. So good job. Yes, well
Remember,
done.
every remote professional is a leader. We hope that you enjoy our latest episode. We'll see you in the Remote Pathways. Have a great day. Take care. See you.
Bye.
Bye, Michelle.